Hey, this is Jacob Kessling. Welcome to the Two Trees Podcast. I'm here with Martin Listener.
Hey, all.
And Mr. John Dillon.
Hello.
And we are here just to kind of extend the conversation of this revival. We'll call it a revival there, happened down there in Kentucky at Asbury University. So if you're not familiar as to what's going on, it is all over the place on TikTok, videos, news, newspapers, articles, churchleaders.com. There's all kinds of stuff taking place, talking about what's happening down in Asbury. If you don't know, I'll just real quick, some weeks ago, I'm not sure the date, it was a chapel they were having, a speaker, just a normal day chapel, and someone, I guess a group, a handful of kids stayed after chapel just to continue worshiping. God just broke their heart. And more kids started showing back up, and they continued worshiping, and then more kids showed up, and they continued worshiping, and they just were doing it around the clock. And then adults started showing up, and family members, and it's grown to a pretty big thing, and in a big advertisement piece or communications all over. So there's lots of debate, whether it's positive and negative. There's phenomenal things, people praising God, and there are those who are aggravated and I will say judging it a certain time. They're just looking at it a certain way.
And I think that's important for us because part of our goal here is not to tell you what to think, but to instead help to guide the discussion in a Christ-honoring way. And usually what we get on social media from our peers out there isn't always it's not lovely. It's not beautiful. It's not compassionate. There's a lot of very powerful men and women with very powerful opinions.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to take this in a positive way. But we also want our Facebook presence to be positive and encouraging. And I think we've experienced that a little bit. Martin was talking to me a little bit about our Facebook. And when we started this, I think we really visualized this as something that maybe 100 or so people would listen to. And we get a couple episodes out, and our moms would be very proud of us. And really, God has opened doors in 45-plus countries, and
that's phenomenal.
We get a lot of the ability to bless the church. And I know I'm being blessed by it, but Martin wanted to talk a little bit specifically about some of his favorite people who are floating around over there in Facebook.
On Facebook, if you just type in Two Trees Podcast, and you'll find us the same emblem that you have on your podcast app, and we've got over 350 members now. Like I said, it's free to do that. Just join it. It's a safe space where we can enjoy each other's company and ask questions and just be open about it. We've had a lot of people that are very vulnerable in asking the questions, and we really appreciate that. It's spurred some good conversation. But we got people like Scott Smith who asked a good question about a good Bible dictionary. Joel Willoughby's had some comments that have come out to us. Of course, Joshua Sherman, you heard him on here. I was fascinated by the stuff that he was saying, and he's been very active the last week and a half or so with that. So we love Josh and everything he does. But, Daniel's on there. Gregory helped us with the YouTube. That I think Jacob's the one that posted that and kind of screwed it up. So we'll leave the Facebook posting to John from here on out. But thanks for the help with that. Jason Hopkins on there leaving some comments. Some great ones, some ideas coming up for maybe a few. We got somebody from Carrie Griffles Answers in Genesis that came over and gave us a good idea. So thanks, Gordon, son, for that. And Alfonso, we love that you're listening to us.
And Carrie's been really involved, too. She's been a huge blessing to our podcast here. So check out Genesis Marks the Spot. She's done us a huge favor just in caring about us at all. Which makes me, it's always nice, to know someone out there loves what we're doing, and she's been a big blessing. Wanted to give a shout out to two of my favorite baristas out there, to Jamie and to Jen at Glacier View. You were upset that your names were not mentioned, but you are so special and so amazingly important, and I want you to know that God loves you. And so do the Two Trees and everyone associated with us.
And a couple more I'd be remiss without saying, but Tabitha Brinkman, she's always commenting and very uplifting stuff, so we see that all the time. And David as well. I think it's Hereford how you pronounce his last name. He's all over the place with us, and we love it. So big shout-out to those guys as well. If we missed your name, sorry, you'll just have to comment a couple more times. And then we'll see it.
We got Travis Frusher threw in a good comment in Milan Bayshore. We have a lot of people, at least local people, that are talking about it. I think it'd be an awesome thing. I'm just going to throw this out here on this podcast to do a local question and answer gathering one night. Just do a podcast, do it live with a group of listeners that are local that can show up. I think that'd be an awesome thing to do.
That'd be cool. Are we recording it?
Yeah, heck yeah, let's do it. It'd be,
all right.
We're
it'd be a
cooking
great
it up
mess.
now.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We can record it, but we don't have to actually put it back out.
Oh, okay. If it's terrible, we'll
Yeah,
we'll read the
we're not
room
gonna
and see
broadcast
how
that.
went.
If you never hear that, just forget we
Just
mentioned
know it
anything.
went
If it
very
never comes
badly.
out, just know it was terrible. No, I just think it'd be a good idea. It's just fun. I think people like the banter, like to go back and forth, and a lot of people have good questions. And I get some phone calls and emails personally. They don't ask them to, and a lot of people are like, "Man, we really love the podcast." Kevin Hawley is one of them. He's probably listening to this. He's working out, but he really enjoys the content, enjoys the the conversations that we have and stuff. And even though people don't even know us as individuals, hopefully you're able to enjoy it. This has been a great journey for me as well. So this will be a great. I used the word journey again.
You did already.
I'm sorry.
You were about to do it again too.
I know. I'm not going to say journey again. I know. This is really a terrible thing.
Well, while Jacob's on his journey, we want to pull it back to what's going on at Asbury. And again, I know that people have really strong opinions. People come from different faith backgrounds and expressions of even what that word revival means. Some people have come from a place where they've been burned by the church, and they have a bad experience, and they have trust issues. And other people seem to be willing to believe everything that floats by, and then you have people who ask questions, and it offends one group or the other, and it has the potential of not being a happy, loving place. And we would like to help it remain on point and on focus. But just by asking a couple questions that people have asked us or that we've had in our discussions about what's going on, and one of them really has to do with the space itself. We know that the Bible talks about sacred space, that there are places where God has revealed his presence in special ways, like the Garden of Eden or the temple in Jerusalem. And many people are waiting in line. Today there were thousands of people waiting in line at Asbury University in a line that wrapped around the campus trying to get into a building called Hughes Hall. And in that hall, that's where the revival started. And when you and I were there, Jacob, it was full, but there were still seats. And I went in and out of the building, I don't know how many times. Can't do that now. There is this push to get in the building. And you have people outside, and they're praying and dancing and reading scripture and things, but everyone wants to be in the space. Is that something that we should be expecting, that if you can get close to where something started, that God has a special gifting for you, if you could just get a little bit closer and a little bit closer? Or is it it reminds me of when Jesus visits the man at the pool of Bethesda, and the water... he says,
waiting for it to ripple
waiting
up.
for the ripples on the water, and there's an angel there supposedly who stirs it, and if you get in the water, you're healed.
Yeah.
And Jesus comes to him where he is. And so I know that there seems to be this real powerful emotion in the Christian community here to get to Asbury and get in that building. Do you think that's healthy, or would you counsel a broader view or a more narrow view, or what are your thoughts?
That's really a tough question. I mean, even before this, like I know
I
that
thought it was a softball. That's
Yeah,
why
he
we
was
pitched it at the
teeing it up
beginning.
for you. I thought.
We have some students, and I've done youth ministry for years, and youth camp is one of those seasons where people experience God like that, and there's people who just want to jump from camp to camp to camp, and somehow they could experience God at camp, but they seem to miss out on that at home or with youth group and that kind of stuff. Camp seems to have something special, so everyone's excited about the next year camp. What's next year? When is it? And I think it's similar in that. I think that people want to feel like they're part of something special. Some people are there because they want to get some good video and put it on their TikTok so they can get some there's all kinds of reasons. But you and I went just to check it out. Like, what is this? What's going on? And I think a lot of people did. I don't know what everyone's motivation was into going, but I wanted to see what it was like inside. And the reality of it is, there was nothing. I don't want to say it wasn't special, because it was, but it wasn't anything like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, because I don't want to say it wasn't special, because there was something actually happening there. But it was, to me, it wasn't one of those, I have to be here. I realized there are people that were experiencing something, and I think it was something very real and tangible happening in many people's lives in that space. But I'm just a big proponent of thinking that it's not about the space. But there are people who really believe that I got to go somewhere or be somewhere to visit with God, this sacred space, whether it's church camp, a concert, to go see a certain speaker or worship, whatever, or even go to things like Asbury. I mean, I think people are
and
searching
to
for
build
something.
on that a little bit. I would say, like, when we have to stay home from church on a Sunday morning and we listen to the online service, it's great because we still get to hear, the service and the sermon, and I think it's just wonderful. But there is something, to your point, is when we go on a Sunday morning to the service and, we're around the people in the congregation and all this, there does seem to be a different effect that happens on me when we are there. I don't think it's because we went inside of a certain building to build off the sacred space idea, and I don't think it's because we were at the church instead of my house, but there is something different about that, and I don't know what it is, because John wants us to sit here and say that Jesus can meet us wherever we are, and we don't have to go to a certain spot to obtain that, and I totally agree with that, but there is something about going to a certain spot that allows that interaction with Jesus to happen more freely, perhaps.
Well, I think that's true. And I know I've encountered Christ at very specific places and had very meaningful emotions at specific spots in the world. And I don't think that's wrong. But what I'm trying to say is that so long as this movement or this revival is viewed as something happening in that building, it cannot be bigger than that building. It has to be viewed as a movement of God and not as a curriculum at Asbury University, not as something for a select few people like us who live within an hour and a half of the building, and we can get there. And everybody else, oh, I'm sorry, buddy, but you missed it. And if that's what God is doing, that it's just for the people in this space, then that's very small. That's very localized. Could be exciting for a little while, but I believe that what we're seeing has the potential to be far more than that. If people would view their God as with them, if they would view themselves, the tens of thousands of people have showed up at this place.
Yep.
And if these people were praying at their churches like they seem to be praying on the lawn of Asbury, I can't help but think that they would be having incredible fruit and revival in their own services as well, and discipleship taking place. But that drive to be part of the big party, the cool crowd, is deep inside of people, and especially the Christian world, going back a long way, is that desire to control the access. And I've heard people online, here lately, because they're getting ready to close down that building and say, okay, we're going to be not having services in this building anymore. And I hear people saying, oh no, the revival's over. We can't participate in the revival. And this must, if this is by the Spirit of God, then it must be accessible wherever the Spirit of God is. And the Spirit of, what was the saying? Where the Spirit is, there's liberty. Was that,
Yeah.
That's
exactly right.
Yeah, there must be the hope of not just going into a building, but a hope of the presence of God. And that is going to manifest in different ways at different times, in church services as well as at the sports bar when you're out with your friends.
So I want to flip that on its head a little bit, because that's what I do best around here, I guess, with that. So we're mentioning that, you don't have to make a long trek to get to this certain building to have the same experience of what is happening in that building, and that God can meet you where you are, in the right circumstances. But so it reminds me of a passage in Romans where he says, should we go on sinning so that grace may abound? And Paul
God
says,
forbid.
By no means, right? With that. But that's the same idea. It's like, well, if God can meet me where I am, then I'm just going to stay right here where I am. And when my time comes, God will meet me where I am, and everything will be just fine with that. So that's the opposite opinion. You have people that have traveled perhaps miles and are standing in massive lines to get into this building so they can experience the same thing, this revival that's happening. But then you have the opposite opinion of that, is where, well, I'm not going to go anywhere and I'm not going to do anything, because when it's my time, the Lord will come to me and give me what I need to be fruitful in this world.
So what's the secret sauce? I mean, I ask this all the time. This is why I ask the kids that go to camp, because it's like, wanting to go back to camp. Same thing with Asbury. What's the secret sauce? What are the common denominators that are happening in this space that make it special? And I really do believe this. God wants us all to experience Him in a certain way. I'm not sure if we all should be just singing songs and praying all the time, and not going to class or not going to work or whatever. But like, what is it? What does it look like for us who are not at Asbury, who are in our homes or in our job place or our workplace? Is this something more we can experience with the Lord? And what is the secret sauce for that? Is it just, what am I asking make sense?
What's the formula?
Yeah, well, if there is a formula, I think it's given to us in Scripture, and I think people aren't going to like it, but
say it. Let's do it.
This is from the Old Testament.
Rip the Band-Aid off, John.
Yeah, we're New Testament church.
I know, it's in Jeremiah. He says, "You'll seek me, and you'll find me when you search for me with your whole heart."
Yeah.
And what I see when I see people waiting in line, when I see people driving to Asbury, is I see expressions of faith. Someone who wants so badly to see and experience a unity with God that you don't experience if you just tack it on to the other things that you're doing in your day. We have to change the way that we live life, the way that we approach our Bible reading, the way that we approach our prayers, the way that we approach church on Sunday, not from a consumer standpoint. But one of the most powerful things that I've read has been about people, is it still going on? Can I get a ride? I'm coming in, I want to be there. And there's this almost like running to Jesus aspect in their minds and in their hearts. And I think that's an expression of, I'm willing to drop everything I'm doing to be with God. So then the question is, are you willing to drop everything you're doing at home to be with God? And the answer is normally no. No, I'm not. I'm willing to go on a trip and drop everything. I'm willing to go to camp and give up my phone and give up these things. I'm willing to go on a missions trip and do these things. But am I willing to do these things at home? The answer is no, because in comfort, Satan lulls us to sleep. I'll read my Bible tomorrow. I'll really get to praying, or I'll prepare myself for this. They don't prepare for church. I mean, they may put on nice clothes, but they've not prayed, Lord, prepare my heart for this sermon. Lord, as I'm singing, I'm really worshiping you. Instead, they're sitting there going, oh, we did this song last week. Or how many times are we going to sing Oceans, or whatever?
They're doing a fourth song. I just want to sit down. Can they be done?
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing there, and you can view that negatively. I view it positively, because I see they're just people loving God. Yeah. And they want to be where he is. But I'm trying to encourage them. If you get put in the overflow room, you're not a second-class participant in what's going on. God doesn't work like that. He's there with you, not there with the event, but there with his people.
And they want this to move out. Like, what does that look like, though, in our home, in our spaces? This isn't about like, hey, let's fill up other auditoriums all over in other universities and stuff.
And you see churches and universities are doing that. They're trying to mimic the event that happened at Asbury. And I don't think that's wrong to try to model yourself after something you thought was beautiful and that sort of thing.
I'm not opposed to that.
But
at
it's
all.
not a recipe. If you do, if you build it, they will come. Yeah,
that's right.
But I think, should churches be revamping what we do? Is this a call to scrap? The model that we've been doing? Should we be expecting an outpouring like this at every service? Is it a failure if that doesn't happen? Does every gathering have to move this way? And I think no. I think every gathering has a purpose. When I gather with a small group, like, my goal isn't always the same. I have some small groups that are about teaching. I have others that are about praying, and others that are about just checking in with people and giving counsel. They're not all the same. And so to treat all church services like they're interchangeable, or every event as though it's interchangeable, or that it's someone else's job to make this present for me, I think that's really sketchy. I think that's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah,
I love the Jeremiah passage that you bring up, and I guess take that with a different spin on it, or however you want to say that. But I have it where the word submission just comes to my mind.
Well, you read the NIV, so
no, I don't.
Oh, okay.
ESV. No. But that's just the thought.
I'm just kidding, everybody. The NIV is wonderful, and submission is a great word.
But the mentality that comes to mind is of giving it to God. And I know that's said a lot, and it's kind of cliche. It's like, well, you have a problem, give it to God, and it'll go away, or whatever. Like it's this magic formula like we're talking about. But it's the idea of giving up your daily comforts, like you mentioned. The comfort is what lulls us to sleep, and Satan can take over. And it's so much easier to do that when it's a special event or it's this big idea, right? It's like, well, I can take off work because I can use this as my yearly vacation, or I can do this, that, and the other. But again, how do we get lulled to sleep and then that submission goes away? I think that's the biggest part of it. Is everybody says, well, your intentions are on God, or you intend to do this, or you intend to do that. I don't like that intentions word, because that just means in a perfect world, this is what you would have done. You were intending to do this, but you did something different. That's the only reason why you say the word intention on there. But if you submit, that is an action. That's something that you have done, and that's something that you are doing or will do in the future. So when you give up your thought process or your power, your authority to Christ, then he utilizes that for certain ways. The way this started, I don't believe people were saying like, hey, if we can get enough people, we can skip class. Or if we get enough this, we can, make this last longer, or this, that, and the other. I don't think that was the intention, because the result wouldn't have been as powerful as it was.
Jacob, how much of that power that he's talking about there do you think is present just in the fact that you've joined in with so many other people?
Well, I mean, I know that, like, there is power just in a full room. I hate saying this, but like a lot of... Are we talking about...
I could preach the same sermon, exactly the same, to a room of 10 people or a room of 300 people.
It'll be different.
And the emotional connection that you get from a full room is different. That's true.
There is a strategy. I mean, a lot of the conferences and stuff that I've been to, and even books that I've read on leadership and such, is they'll talk about shrinking spaces and all that stuff. But the fact is that something stirred and happened with just a handful of people after chapel. And I think that something very special happened in those individuals' life. And I think that people have experienced something really neat while they're there in the larger group. I don't want to debate, and I know you're not trying to debate. I don't want to debate whether it's real or not, or whether it's a full room or not. The question really I have is for let's say people in other countries that are listening. We have what, 40? You said 45 different countries listening.
Yeah, over 45.
And I think that's phenomenal. But like, they might be like, man, I wish I could be their experience. How come they experience that? And this isn't about having a large room and being on news articles all over the place, but what does this look like?
That's huge to me, because when was it a successful revival? And I have no problem calling it a revival. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Was it a revival when it was 8 people in the room?
I think so.
Was it a revival when they broke for lunch?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It doesn't have to be this continual flow. We have this romanticized idea about 24/7 prayer. We haven't stopped reading scripture. So, and there's this feeling of, look what we're doing. But the whole point of revival is not to be about, look what we're doing. The whole point of revival is that to revive. It's the Christian pursuing God with greater depth and passion and saying, Lord, I love you. Lord, I've been here for a while, though. I got to go back to class. And then I studied super hard because I'm a follower of Jesus and I want to give you honor and glory. And now passing my class is part of my worship. Now my conversation with my parents is part of my worship. Now my whole life is part of this, not just the part where I stood in the Hughes Hall and worshiped, but to take that event, which is tangible and is beautiful, but then to take it out of the building and into my life and into my workplace and into all the other places that I go, well, that doesn't sell well. That doesn't look as fancy. That doesn't give off the send us money vibes that some of these churches are no doubt trying to market, and those sorts of things are there. It just is not as romanticized, but there's greater power, sustaining power, more longer lasting and farther reaching. I think our podcast is kind of an example of this. The whole reason, like, I've been able to share the gospel with people I'm never going to meet.
Yeah.
And talk to people that I've never met. But the whole reason to do it was, we ran and bought some microphones and thought, hey, if God can use that, then okay. And it's gone way longer than I thought it was going to go. God is capable. It's just that his people aren't willing to follow. And you got to wonder, these guys who were coming in buses, like, weren't you all, like, the revival didn't start when you got there. Weren't you worshiping on the bus?
No.
Like,
No.
surely they were. Like, what? Like, at home, didn't you have a hard time sleeping the night before when you were like, oh, tomorrow is going to be so cool, and you went out to Applebee's with your buddies, and you were like, oh, this is going to be great. That's revival.
Yeah.
That's all part of that.
Yeah.
It's not just this element of it's got to look like this. It has to feel like this. I feel like that's superficial.
I wonder. I used to tell the students back to the secret sauce. I think that like the components to this are the gathering. I think it's scripture reading, discussing, whether it's a teaching or a sermon or reading and discussion. I think it deals with the repentance and a change and confession of sin, a brokenness, and really this desire for Jesus. And I think there's a sense of humility and uncomfortability. You're out of your comfort zone, out of your space. You know, like you said, sometimes camp, they got to turn their phones in, and like some that fasting from things, getting rid of stuff. Sometimes we're just unwilling to do any of that stuff. We want to go to church. And I think church is a great place to go and to worship and to use your gifts to encourage and to love but I'm wondering if you could have a really neat experience with Jesus if we'd be willing to give some things up, be willing to step into people's lives, be willing to open the Bible and read it. And
I think something that ties together what you're saying and what John was mentioning earlier is kind of the desperation that we have for Jesus. And that goes with the comfort thing. And the best example that I can think of is when there's a pop quiz in school. First thing you do is pray, right? Like, Jesus, I didn't study last night. I forgot to read. Just get me through this with the lucky guess. But that's desperation for help. You know, you mentioned about running to Jesus, this idea of really wanting to be there, and there's this desire that comes with it. But when you're at home or when life is good or when life is comfortable, there's not this desperation for Jesus that we have. We're no more a sinner on Sunday than we are on Wednesday. We're no more a sinner on...
And we have to become desperate for God.
Right. And
we have to see ourselves as poor and needy is how the song went.
And how do you get that feeling when, you know, it's an average Wednesday on your day-to-day life, 9 to 5, and you're busy and this, that, and the other happens? And it's
I don't think it's about conjuring an emotion or a feeling as much as it is just a fact. I know I need to be praying. I know it. I know I need to be doing these things. I need to be fasting. I need to be studying the scripture.
But that need is hidden behind
and
things.
So you have to make it happen. There's a difference when I am praying in my car from when I'm kneeling down in my home to pray, because I've changed my position. It's not that my prayers are like louder when I'm doing that, but I've changed my life and my comfort in my approach to God. And I think it's almost like sharpening the edge of a knife or a sword. There's this element now. It's not that God has changed, but I've purposefully tuned out other things, and I've made space to approach him. And I think a lot of that is what God was doing in the Old Testament when he gave them these rules and things to follow. It wasn't that those rules were anything in particular. It's just that it was a way to approach God and to seek him, and in a way which he had ordained. And he's given us far more freedom now. In the New Testament, he's really relieved us of the things that became burdens and just said, you know, love me, seek me, find me. And especially here, it's kind of become, yeah, I know you love me, and I love you too. Now let's get busy giving me things. And, you know, I'll shop around until I found the church that fits what I want and my needs. And we treat churches like shoes. You know, I got to find the pair that's right for me. And we cycle through them rather than committing to a community and to being part of something and to some people. That's foreign to most people who are attending a church service. They just don't think that way.
But it goes along with the intentions. You shouldn't have the right intentions, but your action should be intentional. The way you mentioned about prayer being different, not because you're praying louder, you're doing it, but you're intentionally going into that space with the right intentions.
And so I think we look at the intentions. We also see a lot of this, Jacob, I'd like your thoughts here, about there's a lot of haters out there on the Asbury thing. And I listened to one guy, he's a King James only fellow, and he was like, you know this isn't real. They ain't using no King James. And I about fell out of my chair, and I was like, you know, why is it that so many church leaders on the charismatic side and the Baptist side and all the sides, as many sides as church has got, why are some of these guys so mad?
I'm trying to be gracious. Like, I sometimes feel like there are a lot of people who just never really have experienced God in an emotional way. And so, like, when they see people with emotion, it's just real easy to sign it off somehow. I don't know if deep down there's some fear or sadness or feeling like we've missed out, but it's just far easy to judge and to say this can't be, and then figure out reasons to. Like, I can make fun of people who are that work out. They work out a lot and they take all the protein and eat all the weird foods and they're cut and 6-pack, and I'm not. And it's real easy for me to say, be real skeptical of, like, they look at all the time they're wasting, and they're probably pumping with steroids. And I feel like sometimes some people are just kind of like that right now. I maybe a little sad, or I think it's coming out in anger maybe, but it's just sadness. Like, I've never experienced that. This is just me trying to be gracious. Like, I don't want to think that people are jerks. I don't think Jesus would respond in some way that people are responding on, like, Facebook and stuff. But I wonder if they're just sad. Like, I've never experienced that, so it can't be real. Like,
I think you're right on the right path. As soon as you started talking, I was thinking of a golf analogy because I've been golfing for like 15 years or something. Never had a hole in one. But I know a guy that has golfed.
I putt-putted a hole in one.
Well, I've had a few of those.
Through the windmill and everything.
Never had a legitimate hole in one, but I know a guy that's golfed way less than me, way less often than me, and he has a hole in one. So the first time I heard that, I'm like, okay, you lied. Like, that was fake, or it was whatever. Because, I've done golf right for 15 years, and I understand more about the game than you do. And if I haven't experienced this feeling, then there's no way that you have. Like,
right.
I've been doing it the correct way. And I think that rolls over to this. Like, I've been studying my Bible and I've been doing it every way that's right. And all of a sudden this guy just does the right thing and just starts speaking in tongues or whatever the case may be.
I do think there's also some theological approach, or we are far too intellectual, and emotions seem to be scary. Emotional side of religion or side of our walk with Jesus is scary, because if it's not based off truth, there's no verse in the Bible with that, then, this can't be, or this doesn't line up with, or whatever. It is a little bit scary. What is it? Can you go too far? Is this out of control? I mean, I grew up in a world where, anything charismatic or feeling oriented was just shunned. And so these things are just really scary for people.
And I want to point out also, not all of the experience at Asbury is emotional.
No.
I
didn't see much of it, honestly.
When we were there, I saw my people there. The readers, the writers, they weren't bouncing around.
I didn't see many people raising their hands when I was there.
That way. And so, like, there are churches that do, and they're there now in massive numbers. And so when you watch, that's what you're seeing. But the idea that it was just emotional is false. There was a lot of just people praying, people sitting down and reading.
When people take videos or pictures, though, they wait until the few moments where, the crescendo happens and then everyone pops their hands up. And so, but that wasn't like that the majority of the time I was there.
But it's because it makes a better picture.
It does.
The shot from the balcony of four guys in the corner reading a Bible is going to look fuzzy, and you can't tell what they're reading. And it's because to them it's private. Yeah. And it just doesn't translate in that medium well. So you wait until the upbeat song is on, and then you record it, and you're like, oh, man, this is happening. And you're like, well, you're only getting a glimpse of this. And so the point is not to reproduce an emotion,
right?
But the point is to pursue God, and to pursue God passionately. The whole premise of revival is God. And if you're not pursuing God, I don't know what the whole point of this is. I don't know what we're trying to do here. And so when I listen to these pastors talk, I feel like there's an element of jealousy. There's an element of, well, why isn't that happening at my church, kind of a thing. And I just would tell a pastor who's experiencing that, church isn't necessarily for that. Church is there to be a community of people who've gathered together to worship and to remember the resurrection, to take communion, to sit under your teaching, to be preaching. Not everything has to happen in your church. It's okay.
So you guys don't think that this kind of template of what they're doing should be picked up on a Sunday morning? But, this is like, oh, this seems to be really working. There's revival.
I think the secret sauce thing is really, I I've read the books, and if you paint your walls black, and if you do this with the proper lighting and enough this, that, and the other thing,
you get the right gobo light hitting right with the good haze.
I think you can manipulate emotions really well that way, but I don't think you can actually generate love for God with anything less than a repenting heart. And I think that's what you're seeing at Asbury. And I'm telling you, I was there, I saw it, I talked to them.
Yeah.
They are repenting of their sins and they're turning to Jesus. They may not understand everything that goes along with that, but I'm telling you right now, there were people there who were not fans of Jesus and now are. That's revival. There are Christians there who were not excited about a relationship with God, and now they are. That's revival. It's not about miraculous signs and things. I didn't see a single thing like that when I was there. Now, since then, they've had things happen. Right. And they've been talking. We want to talk about one of those in particular. There was a video. I don't know if it's gone viral, but it's made massive waves here of what seemed to be a demonic possession that took place at Asbury University. And you sent that to me, and you actually had friends who were in the row of what was happening. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So what happened is this, a 16-year-old young lady, she was brought by her parents. I think she was having some health issues. And I think during the worship song, she started to what seemed to be going into a seizure. And so kind of the crowd spread out a little bit. And so they decided to try to carry out so she could get some medical attention. It was pretty full. I mean, it was really full. I know that we were there. They were pushing people out and put them over in the overflow because they wanted the aisles open. But it seemed like it was pretty full. Anyway, so she was in like a seizure. And the two men that were there around her, one of them I think has epilepsy or has seizures and so understands that kind of thing. And he is very skeptical about any kind of being demonized or demon possessed, that kind of stuff.
You know this guy?
It's Paul Isaac's friend. I'm friends with Paul Isaac, so I know it's a friend of a friend.
The proverbial friend of a friend.
Yes. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. Just her. Yeah. I don't know the guy's name, but I did have another friend, Jesse, who writes for churchleaders.com. He said he was there that night as well, but he was in a different area. Anyway, in saying all of that, as they're carrying her out, a lady who I heard was a missionary from another country that was there that night said, "This isn't a seizure, this is a spiritual thing," and began to, and you'll hear it in the video, say, "In Jesus' name, come out of her." Now, that would be super embarrassing if that was me and I just was literally having a seizure, but and so she says it a few times out loud, and you can hear it above the crowd and stuff, and then a few people in the crowd start saying the same thing. And what you hear is this shriek or this scream of some sort, and then people just kind of start
that
praising.
Seems to be in response to the rebuking.
Yes, yeah. And after that takes place, she gets up and she's revived. Like there's something fresh about her. And again, the gentleman who experiences seizures says that after you have a seizure, you're very exhausted and wore out. And that's not what he saw in her and the 16-year-old girl. Anyway, very interesting thing. I mean, it's easy to be skeptical, but these are some things that have happened. But I would think that coming to this place, you're coming expectant, and it's easier to believe these kinds of things can take place. And certainly we know God can cast out demons. We know that Jesus sent his disciples out to go this. We know that there are still demonized. We know they're still demon possessed, although I think it's very difficult for that to happen. I think it causes, there's just, from what I've learned, and I've learned in my recent years, not, growing up around this, is that demon possession is a very difficult process, and there has to be some severe trauma for years, and I mean it's just a lot of that. So, but did something happen that night, or is this one of those I guess shows that just gets lots of views? This is just the big question that comes on. This is what's caused some of the conversation back and forth. Some are like, "Praise God, this is awesome," and some are like, "This is out of control."
Well, I have a take, and I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that I believe demon possession is real.
Yeah,
I don't doubt that for a minute, and I've counseled people who believed they were struggling with it. You called me in once with something that was going on, and it was someone that you knew. But I'm going to tell you right now that Christians are especially they want to believe something miraculous took place. And so they will lower their guard and believe things when they don't have the information to say one way or another.
Yeah.
And I think that instead we miss the purpose of how the church should be responding to that. You saw there a woman who seemed to be having a medical event. And when I counsel with somebody, they don't wear a sign that says, "Hi, I'm demon possessed." Like it doesn't work that way. There are signs to possession, and it is part of a process. It is a very tricky and ultimately spiritually discernible thing that's taking place, and we can talk about it later. We plan to actually talk about infestation and demonized and all those things, but the ultimate end of that is the loss of yourself to the control of a spiritual being called possession. It's very rare, and it seems to have been much more common at different times, for instance, during the life of Jesus, but it does still happen. But when you experience something, to jump immediately to the conclusion that so-and-so is demon-possessed is a very dangerous thing to do. And it has got the church in a lot of trouble in the past. So-and-so must be demon-possessed because, look what they did, or look what they said, or look what there's going on there. And instead, what I would counsel the church to do is, instead of trying to use what this young lady went through as fuel to prove your view of demons or your view of the revival, instead view that event as an opportunity to pray for a young lady.
Yeah.
And say, "I don't know what happened, Lord, but I love you, and I love that young lady, and I want good for her, and I want her to be safe." And even if you can't tell what happened, and it's hard for a Christian to admit that they don't know. We're all experts in everything. And to say, "Well, I had this feeling." Well, I have feelings, you have feelings.
Yeah.
And some of my feelings aren't as correct as they should be. There are times when I don't know. And I've been lied to and tricked before by people who claimed one thing, and I believed them. And I was wrong, even though I was very passionate about my approval or disapproval of things. We can be wrong. If you don't know, don't say. The people who really can tell you are her family, the people that she loves and have a life with her. And it would be a sign to them if that really did happen. And I'm not saying it did or it didn't. I'm just sitting on the outside and saying, just because you see something on TikTok doesn't make you an expert in the spiritual world.
That's true.
Sorry, Jacob.
I know. I love TikTok.
But we should be intrigued by it.
You're right.
I think the proper thing to do is to say, "Hey, did you see this? What do you think about that?" But if it's only an entertainment thing and it doesn't drive us to prayer and to seeking God, then I think the church is missing an opportunity. And right now I feel like it's missing the opportunity.
Don't you think that happened a lot when Jesus was walking the earth? Like he heals these people, like the guy who has has a legion of them in him. And here is, instead of like looking at him and saying he's set free, he's whole again, they start this, that we cost the pigs, Jesus, you need to get out of here. Or they're bugging the guy about, But
even then, like there were people who really knew him. They had an established relationship with this person.
Yes.
And they knew that this was somebody who was demon-possessed because there was an ongoing relationship with this man. You do not have an ongoing relationship with someone that you saw in a video in a crowd on TikTok.
Well, I'm saying there's an obsession with how it happened, why it happened versus the person.
Oh, yeah.
We're not looking at the person now.
I'm with you there.
Like,
but
the guy's like, "I don't know. I was blind and now I see." You ask all these questions.
Yes.
Instead of like celebrating with this man who's now received sight in the Bible, they're wanting to know about this man who healed him and how did he do it on the Sabbath and what are all these questions. It's like, and you read these stories and you forget, like, are they not even happy for this guy?
So we're going to get into in a couple of we started a series on demons. We looked at the scapegoat this past week. We're going to look at some of the Old Testament stories and ultimately into the life of Jesus. And we're going to talk about these things. But demon possession is not what you see on television. It's not a lot of the things that people start yelling about at church sometimes. And they're well-meaning, but there really is a reality behind these stories. And it's not as cut and dry as people seem to wish that it was. And I think my first reaction if I saw somebody like that is make sure they're safe. Yeah. And surrounded by emotionally charged people is not safe. You've got to move, and the people reacted well. They moved her to a safe space. The authorities were called. There were paramedics there. Is there a supernatural deliverance that took place? I don't know. It looked like it, but I don't know. But I think right afterwards, I'm going to ask the EMT to look at her and say, "Hey, check her heart rate, make sure she's got the right, her blood pressure is not out of control." That's not a lack of faith.
Yeah.
That's just loving somebody. You disagree, Martin? You look furious over there.
No,
I'm wondering if you're demon possessed, actually.
Yeah, I'm not furious. Just this is out of my element with this. I mean, I'm a skeptic by birth, I guess, with that. So I'm the opposite of what you're saying. Is I'm thinking it's purely a physical reaction or a medical emergency or something along those lines. So that's my knee-jerk
You
reaction.
default to just being skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
and
it is.
there are other people who default the other way.
Yes.
So which one's right? Neither one's right. It's just that there are different people. Some people, guys, have been burned by church. There are scammers out there who try to manipulate and to work the broom. And there are people out there who cope with this, and their initial reaction isn't that they don't love Jesus. It's that they have a real hard time trusting what you're saying. And right now what I'm hearing online is, oh, well, they're doubting the power of God. They're not doubting the power of God. They've experienced the depravity of humanity. I one time watched this lady. She fell over in a holy fit and then kind of got up and fixed her dress so she was more modest and then went back to having her fit. And I remember thinking, well, that was odd. Like, why did you wait till you thought no one was looking, kind of a thing. But it was, I can't tell you, was that real? Was that not? Never met the lady, didn't talk to her afterwards. But I can tell you right now, I had questions about that. Like there was a pause, it just seemed to me disingenuous. But it's not my place to say. I do have questions about it, not because I don't love Jesus, but because I've had people try to sell me snake oil a lot of times.
Do you think that this is just one of a big thought, as this has taken place, or other revivals or whatever, even going to Billy Graham Crusade back in the day, you fill up stadiums.
Don't you talk bad about Billy.
I'm not. But what's the draw? I mean, I can't help but to think, as you're seeing lines of thousands of people, there's all kinds of reasons as to why they're there. But people have taken time out to travel to a space, to a space or a place, whether it is a Billy Graham Crusade, whether it is here at Asbury. Do you feel like that people feel there's something, or they know there's something else, something they're missing, something like they're going through their spiritual journey as to how they've been taught, what their parents did, what their grandparents did, but this younger generation is looking around and saying, is there more? Is there something missing? This is what where my brain goes, and this is what causes the journeys, the miles of driving time to get to a space or place, wondering if not necessarily am I going to get healed, but deep inside I'm wondering if is there something else? Is there something more? Is it just about going to church and behaving, keeping my nose clean, just trying to do the best I can and raise my kids and tithe and that's it? Or is there something else? And I think for me, this has become the big question mark. Is this happening in the lives of lots of people all over the world? Is there something else than what we've been shown in the generations before? And we've heard the fights over, is it hymns or this music, or is it this space? Do we put a steeple or not? Do we have pews or chairs? Does it lights and fog? But all of us are still asking: is there something else? Is this it? And I don't think that God's holding back. I don't. I'm wondering if we've just been raised in a system that is compartmentalized, and I think perhaps we've just missed out on some other thing. And I think people are looking for it, and they switch churches thinking that's it, and the next church is just a different version of what they came from, different kind of music, different speaker, different times of services, different friends, but they're still left with that. Is this it? Is it just a Sunday morning gathering and a sermon and 3 songs, maybe a small group? Is it?
From my experience, what I think stems from that idea is, for me, and like you mentioned, that there's arguments or there's just passion in the church, whether it is for a certain topic that you're going over, whether it's for a physical item that you need to have or whatnot, but there's always this passion that is involved in the church. And you can say that's emotion, you can say that's spiritual or whatever, but there's such passion. And for me, growing up and still in my spiritual journey with that is,
I love that word.
if there's so much passion in church, there has to have been an experience in these people's lives that really solidified the truth that they believe in. That's my perspective, is there's something that happened to these people that they are convinced that their way is the right way. And so I think people are looking for that, you say come to Jesus moment, or just this something that is revealed to you, whether it's in a vision, or whether it's in a dream, or whether it's a possession of your body, or like something extravagant. But there's something that had to have happened in these people's lives to, have them feel the way that they do, or have such strong opinions on the things that they do. And that's my experience, is like, man, if I just had that. And then you read the Bible and you see these things where God physically appears to them, or in a dream that he appears or speaks verbally to these people. And you're like, man, like, how do I get to that? Maybe it's because I haven't gone to a revival service, or maybe I just haven't been around when God has been revealing himself, like what's happening in Asbury. And I think that's why you have people that are traveling, thousands of miles, or spending all this money, time, resource, effort to get to this spot, because they want that revelation in their own life to know that what they're doing is the right thing.
I think that people have a passion for the supernatural, saved or unsaved. I think that the idea of seeing something supernatural appeals to us in our very core. If this is the same reason that people pay money to go stay in haunted houses, or spend all their time in the woods looking for Bigfoot, or for some sort of cryptid that's out there. There is this desire to touch the unexplained. And I think part of that is what we're seeing at Asbury. It isn't just that people want to be part of some revival. They want to be part of that one. They want to touch it. They want to see it. There's a reason that you go to museums and they have signs that say, don't touch this. Because given the opportunity, most people will walk up and put their hands on the painting or the sculpture. That's just part of human nature. We want to be as close to it as we can. When I went to England with a school trip, we went to Stonehenge, and they had these rangers like walking around to make sure doofuses like me didn't like walk up into the middle and try to get like a panoramic shot of the whole thing from the inside. They're like, no, let's not have any of that, sir. You stay back over there where you can see it. But inside of me, I thought, how dare you put this rope in front of me? I will step past this rope. I didn't do that, but I wanted to. I think people they're passionate about the supernatural. And I think that's good for us, because we're a show about the supernatural. We want to talk about demons. It's not wrong to want to talk about that stuff. What does the Bible say about ghosts, demons, the pagan gods, all that stuff? Is it wrong for us to think about it? No, I don't think it's wrong. I am a spirit clothed in flesh. It's natural for me to be interested in the supernatural. And I think Asbury is kind of a physical manifestation in our culture of what we're trying to talk about here on our podcast. And that's that the supernatural world is real, and that people want to understand it. They want to touch it. They want to see it. They want to be part of it. And I think that's a God-given desire.
I think that's awesome. I was just thinking about the verse that that Satan came to kill, steal, and destroy, and that Jesus come that they may have life and life to the full. And that is a verse that has I've been looming in my mind for some time, because I have I see a lot of killing and just not necessarily murder, but kind of in that sense of destroying reputations in life, stealing and destroying. I see the destroy, but this abundant life that I believe is can be experienced even right now in this kingdom. I've not seen a lot of that, and this is where I again go back to this idea of, can this be a little space for a moment to see, and could this be an internal yearning for something that is special?
I think that's exactly what it is, and I think if you want to go to Asbury, you should go. It's cool. We had a fun time, and we experienced something I thought was special. But I want you to know that the Lord is with you right now. As you're listening to this, the supernatural world is around you right now. And that there are people around you who are also interested in this. You're not alone. As weird as you may feel when you bring it up at Bible study and everyone looks at you like you fell out of the moon.
It's true.
They're out there, buddy. And if they're not there, we're here. And we're excited to be part of you. You're our people my friend. And if you're interested in this, you're just one of us. And there are thousands of us all over the place. We're part of that conversation. We're by no means the conversation, but we enjoy being a little spoke on the wheel. And I think that you should look into this. Tell us what you think. We're interested in your opinion, but I also reserve the right to ignore it. Just kidding. No, I'll read it. I hope you have an awesome day, my friends, and remember that Jesus is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, the Lord mighty and awesome.